What is up, guys? Welcome to the Transparency. Welcome Saturday night special live edition. I usually don't do lives on Saturday, but we have a special live for you. What is today? August the 2nd, 2025. And the live is Chris McDonough's MSM Horror Tour exposes lead detective's false police reporting ? Bombshell. Again, welcome. What you guys are looking at right there is a whiteboard. That is a whiteboard. And the whiteboard is being used. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, and we're going to keep everybody in it to win it. We're going to start off, though, jumping right into it and explaining that I've personally read every single police report authored by the Moscow Police Department, 1 to 314. And some of those police reports were multiple pages, so it's in excess of 500 pages. A lot of shit. I was waiting to get the material from Moscow Police Department with the police reports and to review them all for this opportunity, which would either be to expose Chris McDonough and his claims on November 24th, 2022, or expose the Moscow Police Department. I never thought a million thousand years that I'd be able to expose both, but that's what's going to happen. Everybody's probably wondering, what does this have to do with the Idaho4 case? Well, there's a lot that has to do with the Idaho4 case. For starters, there is something known as an inserter. Chris McDonough is, well, who is he, right? So let's talk about who he is. He is an ex-homicide detective from California Oceanside PD. Don't give a shit when he retired or anything like that. I think he retired too early because I think maybe he was forced out. Anyways, what is Chris McDonough's claim to fame with his career? That would be few in here. Let's see. The 1998 case, which I went ahead and pulled the 65 pages here. Right here. 1 page out of 65. You see that? Yeah. And this is, I was like, whoa, what is this from? Well, Chris McDonough got sued, and so did a bunch of people. And it was because of his involvement in a case from 1998, the murder of Stephanie Crow. So in 1998, Chris here was asked to, in 1998, 14-year-old Michael Crow was charged with the murder of his sister, Stephanie Crow. The police started targeting him after he seemed, quote unquote, distant and preoccupied when his sister's body was found. And during interrogation, police psychologically led him to make a false confession. He was later declared factually innocent, and the family won a lawsuit in excess of $7 million in 2011. But that's a long time to wait to have all of this happen. So I want to show you that what Chris was brought in for was to do a voice analysis. And it was back then in 1998, it was referred to as Chris used a computer voice stress analyzer, CVSA, during Michael's interrogation. And I want to show you clips from this. Here we go. Well, if you guys ever want to read it, it's a lot. It's good reading. But Chris was asked to come in to do this specialized voice, specifically the CVSA test. Okay. The interrogations were later deemed psychologically abusive by the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, involving tactics such as lying about evidence, claiming Stephanie's blood was found in Michael's room, and pressuring the teens into confessing. Okay. The confessions were ruled as coerced by the courts, and charges against the teens were dropped in 1999 when DNA evidence linked this other guy to the murder. But because of Chris's big fuck up and these other officers' big fuck up, the guy that actually the blood was found on his clothing, that guy would actually be acquitted of the charges due to the jurors believing in cross-contamination. But I want to show you some of the questions that were asked by Chris while interviewing a 14-year-old who had just literally found his dead sister. So here we go. Making it nice and big for you guys. Zoom in here. Back up. Okay, so right here is where Chris comes into play. Oceanside responded by sending one of its detectives, Christopher McDonough. When Detective McDonough arrived at Escondido, he provided with limited information regarding Stephanie. He was provided with limited information regarding Stephanie's murder. Michael was then interviewed later that day for a third time by Detective Chris McDonough and Clater. This interview lasted more than 3 hours and took place at the Escondido police station. At the beginning of the interview, Michael indicated that he felt sick. Michael then repeated the same series of events for the evening of January 20th and the morning of January 21st that he had recounted in the first two interviews. He said things like, I feel like I spent all day away from my family. I couldn't see them. I feel like I'm being treated like I killed my sister, and I didn't. It feels horrible, like I'm being blamed for it. Everything I own is gone. Everything I have is gone. Everything. You wouldn't even let me see my parents. It's horrible. He's 14. Detective Chris then entered the room and took over the interview. So as he saw that from the glass, he said, let me just come in and take over this. Okay. After Michael recounted the same series of events and again expressed how stressful the past 2 days had been, McDonough introduced the computer stress voice analyzer. Wow, what a great call. Awesome. Wow. Chris told Michael the stress voice analyzer, in quotes, was controlled by the government for a long time, okay? Because it was so accurate. Detective McDonough asked Michael a series of questions, a long series of yes or no questions, including both controlled questions and questions specific to Stephanie's death. McDonough then reviewed the results with Michael and told him that the test, in quotes, showed that you had some deception on some of the questions. I think he means answers. Chris asked him, is there something, though, that maybe you're blocking out in your subconscious? Look at what he does here. In your subconscious mind that we need to be aware of. Chris pressured Michael about whether there was something Michael needed to confess, which Michael repeatedly denied. At this point, Detective Clater took over the interview. They were just passing him around like a hot potato. Okay. We get back to passing him back to Chris here. At this point, Clater left and McDonough resumed the interview. As Clater left, Michael said he was sobbing. Because what just happened here is Claytor next introduced the idea that Michael killed Stephanie but did not remember it. Michael started repeating over and over that he didn't remember doing anything. He also asked Claytor if he was sure Michael had done it, to which Claytor responded, in quotes, "I'm sure about the evidence. Absolutely." At this point, McDonough resumed, comes back in. Maybe he was sitting right there. And as Claytor left, Michael was sobbing, God, why? Oh, God, why? I don't deserve life. I don't want to live. I can't believe this. Oh, God, why? How could I have done this? I don't even remember it. When McDonough entered the room, Michael continued to state that he didn't remember and asked, how can I not remember doing something like that? That's not possible. The interview ended shortly thereafter. Look at this. Claytor told Michael that they were going to play a game in which they would talk about the evidence and Michael would explain it. Things like, you played enough of these games. You know how the knife works. They cut her. Is that a question? I don't know. I really can't tell you. Question. You know how knives work, Michael. That's a little insulting to say that in front of Ralph and I, who investigate these cases all the time, right? I guess. You guess. They go on and on and on and on and on. The detectives also followed up on the idea that Claytor had introduced the day before that Michael had killed his sister but did not remember it. Through the entire 6-hour interview, Michael repeatedly asserted that he did not remember killing his sister, to which the detectives insisted, I'm helping you remember, and I think you don't want to remember. Then they introduced that there was two Michaels, a good Michael and a bad Michael. It goes on and on and on. I'm not going to sit here and bore us with all of this crazy shit. But I had the lovely opportunity to work with the Moores, and they worked with one of the best and had the best false confession experts. Lo and behold, in this lawsuit, the Crows went out and got Dr. Leo, who was the same false confession expert that the Moores had. And I was shocked when I came across this, and I was like, oh my gosh, Dr. Leo did this case? Richard, right here, Dr. Richard Leo, an expert in coerced confessions, described Michael's interrogation, in quotes, the most psychologically brutal interrogation and tortured confession that I've ever observed, end quote. Hey, Chris, did you see this review on your work? It's in an opinion by the higher courts. They fought this lawsuit, okay, the civil suit, and they were denying all this wrongdoing to the point that, 1998 to then be the trial courts finally, once it got to a suppression hearing, suppressed the confessions. But these kids were all held for a year. But more importantly, when they went ahead and filed the civil suits, these cops had the audacity to fight these civil suits, okay? And to this day, Chris has not claimed any wrongdoing, but because of his actions, as well as these other officers' actions combined, they settled for $12 million in a suit that, of course, the police department's paid. Not a penny out of Chris's pocket. They were claiming that they had qualified immunity. Well, guess what? This amazing judge in the higher courts said, not so fast. No, you guys don't. We did. Hold on, let me get to this. So it's because of people like Chris McDonough that I have my huge philosophy, which is our constitutional rights matter. And so my motto is, just because somebody gets arrested, like those 3 boys got arrested, you are innocent until proven guilty. Okay. And so basically in this case, if you read this, it'll show you how low of a bar probable cause is, right? But more importantly, it goes into talking about, well, these officers knew that without these confessions, there was nothing. There was no probable cause. Michael wasn't the only boy. There were 2 other boys. So for a total of 3 boys. So I want you guys to see this, that it's something that's going on with the Kohberger case, which was a misrepresentation in the affidavit constitutes a violation of the 4th Amendment if the misrepresentation is material. Franks versus Delaware. Misrepresentations can be affirmative or based on omissions. Affirmative misrepresentations are material only if there is no probable cause absent consideration of the misrepresented facts. A misrepresentation based on the omission is material only where the omitted facts, in quotes here, case doubt on the existence of probable cause, United States versus Garza. And if a plaintiff is able to demonstrate that a warrant was issued as a result of a material misrepresentation, a police officer defendant may still be entitled to summary judgment on qualified immunity grounds, unless the plaintiff, who would be the family here, Michael and his family, unless the plaintiffs can also demonstrate that the police officers deliberately falsified information presented to the magistrate or recklessly disregarded the truth. Thus, to determine whether the 2 warrants were supported by probable cause, we must exclude any misrepresentation contained in the supporting affidavit, add any information which was improperly omitted from the affidavits, and then determine whether the remaining information is sufficient to create probable cause. We conclude that only the 2nd warrant was supported by sufficient probable cause, but also that the 1st warrant does not conclusively demonstrate a deliberate falsification of information or reckless disregard for the truth, such that the defendants are entitled to qualified immunity. We therefore affirm the district court's grant of summary judgment as to both warrants, because that burden is that threshold is so high. But I was like, oh, wow, imagine that. They're going to get off. Then the judge is like, not so fast. They photographed these boys naked when they weren't supposed to. Then this is where I get to thoroughly enjoy this. As you can see my notes here. When listen to how stupid their argument was. Right here. They drew blood without a warrant from the parents of Michael. And this is what they said was the reason that they had probable cause. The drawing of blood from free persons generally requires a warrant supported by probable cause to believe that a person has committed a criminal offense and that his blood will reveal evidence relevant to the offense. As the district court also noted, a police officer is not entitled to qualified immunity for a search conducted pursuant to a search warrant, in quotes, where the warrant application is so lacking, is an indica of probable cause as to render official belief in its existence unreasonable. Under clearly established Supreme Court and Ninth Circuit law, no reasonable police officer could have believed that the desire to prove that another person, presumably Michael, killed Stephanie, established probable cause to draw Stephen and Cheryl's blood. The district court properly denied summary judgment and qualified immunity. I said, oh my God, ate up like a you-know-what on prom night, Chris. You failed a 14-year-old boy and tortured him on the day that he found his sister's bloody, stabbed 9 times body, okay? And then this continued for years. And you want to say that you care about victims? And then here's my other comment, which is boom, what dumb fucks. Yep. You think that that's going to be probable cause that, oh, hey, we had probable cause to take that person's blood because that's the way that they were going to prove that they didn't do it. Now, they tried to go after McDonough for conspiracy. And they got the other ones on it. But the only reason that Chris didn't get stuck with the conspiracy is because I just feel like he wasn't part of the cool kids. They excluded him on like really talking about their plan, which was they decided that McDonough was not liable for the alleged Fourth Amendment violation of the conspiracy portion because the plaintiffs did not demonstrate that McDonough shared the common objective of the larger conspiracy alleged by the plaintiffs, which was a conspiracy to wrongfully prosecute and convict the boys, because he was from a different police department, Chris. So he wasn't privy to being involved in those talks of how really we're going to fuck people over. And so my comments there was, Chris, phew, close call. You still suck, though. You just suck alone. We conclude that the boys were wrongfully detained. Their coerced confessions were introduced at their Dennis H. hearing, where it was determined that they would remain incarcerated. I cannot believe that they didn't settle out from immediately. Nope. Chris, they drugged this out from 1998 to 2011. Then his inadequacies and his failure to, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we just made a mistake. It costed the actual guy that killed Stephanie to be acquitted by the jury because they put on the stand, this guy's lawyer put the boys on the stand and showing how they confessed to stuff. So that's how, when you want to talk about a domino and what Chris's true final landing blow here is that somebody that actually stabbed Stephanie 9 times was acquitted. I have no idea how a district judge, because this had to go to a higher court, because the district judge sucked off the police and sided with all of them when this initially got presented in court, that Michael Crow's family and the other families had to appeal to the higher court to get this to be overturned. And I'm like, how the fuck do you people sleep at night? How do you sleep at night? Having conducted the interrogations, the officers were aware both that the confessions were coerced and that the confessions could be used to keep the boys in jail. They knew this. We reversed the district court's grant of summary judgment as to this claim. Boom, another one. Now, go ahead and search it up, Google Michael Crow, and you can read all about Chris McDonough. And truly, when you want to talk about victims, he still to this day, has claimed no wrongdoing, that they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't coerce anybody, they didn't do anything. Meanwhile, the police departments picked up a $12 million bill because Michael Crow's family, right before trial started, they settled. They pulled a Bryan Kohberger. They pled. They're like, here, let's do an out of court settlement here. And the out of court settlement was the one family got $7.5 million, the other family got $4 million and some change, $12 million. Chris McDonough, $0 came from him. Now, that's your Michael Crow case. Gabby Petito. People are probably like, wait, Chris McDonough had something to do with Gabby Petito? Yeah. Actually, well, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do it like this. Chris McDonough was actually taken off the air. When I say that, his channel was removed from YouTube for harassment. Okay? It happened during the Gabby Petito case. During the Gabby Petito case, Chris McDonough Nomadic Trek. He goes out and he accuses Nomadic Trek of being Bryan Laundrie. Okay? As you can see the dates. And Nomadic Trek is actually an ex-law enforcement retired person. Okay? And Chris McDonough went at this person and said, nope, this is Bryan Laundrie. Remember it was the hunt for Bryan Laundrie? And so here, the thought of being nailed by Chris McDonough is so exciting. I thought that was hilarious. Look at the dates here, October 7th, 2021. Before that, September 30th, 2021, Chris McDonough and Michael Crow. Does past behavior predict future behavior? He did his own research and saw, who is this guy that's accusing me of being Bryan Laundrie? Then, October 10th, 2021, yes, TIR, that stands for The Interview Room, is back on YouTube with all, well, most anyway, the videos on me gone. Some community posts need to go too, but perhaps in time. I hope that part of the settlement is the content removal, a change of heart, and perhaps acknowledgement, apology, retraction. We'll see. He didn't retract what he did to a 14-year-old. I highly doubt he's going to do anything to somebody on, you know, some stranger when he couldn't even apologize to a 14-year-old. Put not just one 14-year-old through shit, 3. Now, I had no idea who Chris McDonough, didn't even know who this person was, right? The first time that I ever knew, like I didn't know any of this stuff existed, didn't know his involvement with the Michael Crow case, didn't know his involvement with the Gabby Petito case like this. Okay. So here, my first involvement with Chris McDonough was from the Idaho4 case, which I've been covering since the beginning. And if you zoom in here, there was all this hoopla, all this talk about somebody was at the 1122 King address, and it was during and over like the Thanksgiving break, and they found a glove that was inside the crime scene tape, and that this person that found it was a retired ex-homicide detective. And I'm like, what? Found a glove inside the crime scene tape? I want to show everybody. Okay. So, see back through here, right by the garbage cans here, where Chris explains that he found this glove. Okay. Because this is just a couple different angles. Okay. This is on the second day. See where the cops are? Okay. So all the way over here see where, and then here's your aerial view so that you can see where we're actually talking about. Okay. And that these were, this glove right here, fluffed up, nestled in the grass and leaves. Okay. Now, if you actually go, well, I'm going to play something for you guys because I don't trust that fucking fat fuck. Whoops, did that come out? Whoops, my bad. Hold on.
You'll see here, I'll point it out for you, that I discovered this glove, and fortunately they collected it. And it should be noted, you could see this standing on the public road. This wasn't, nobody crossed any lines, so you could just visibly see it right from the road. Yeah, and so a couple thoughts come to mind. I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, right? I'm saying, fortunately, it's still on the other side of the tape, and so they still had control of that scene. The officer that was there, obviously, they didn't. Okay,
so Chris says this on his own podcast on November 27th, 2022. November 27th. Now, he actually said he found it on November 24th. And that is actually the day of Thanksgiving. Now, a couple things. The video that he was showing, it was very light outside, daylight, and in Idaho, during the months of November, December, January, February, until daylight savings and what happened. But it's going to get dark earlier. And so Chris's video is all light outside. It's all light. And something else that he mentions when he was there is he was walking around and he notices a red car. Okay. And he strikes up a conversation with a gentleman that is allegedly in this red car, which I have the pictures of. It's part of the video. And lo and behold, he says that this person that was in this red car was explaining to him how, yeah, you want to back in over here. It's over by Linda Lane. You want to back in over here because it gets so slick, in the when the weather gets like this with the ice and stuff like that. So you always want to back in over here so you can just, pull right out. And he said to himself, because this is transcribed, he said, well, that's really thinking ahead there. Who are you? Lo and behold, the person that was in the red car was none other than Mark Furman's son. Mark Furman, I don't know if you guys know this, but Mark Furman moved to Sandpoint, Idaho. But in that red car was Mark Furman's son. You guys can't make this shit up. Say it ain't so. Mark Furman's son. So on the same day that a magical glove appears, okay, Chris McDonough strikes up a conversation with the gentleman that was in the red car, and that person was none other than Mark Furman's son. Then, so now think about this. If you're even like a lay person, whoever you are, you're a witness, you find something, don't you think the cops would view you? Yes. Don't you think that not only would the cops interview you for finding this because you're flagging them down and telling them what you're doing, whatever. Chris went on to say that he flagged down security, told him about the find, and that he then filmed and watched security call the evidence technician people come in and that they took the glove. Okay. Well, him being an ex-homicide detective, you would think that maybe you shouldn't be talking about that for the integrity of the case, and you should just probably keep that to yourself. No. And if you were ex-homicide detective, you might want to go down to the police department and say, "Hey, I was the person that found that glove. I don't know if you need to interview me. I also took video of stuff so you could see that it was there when we arrived. It's in my footage. I don't know if you need it." There would be reports of this. Out of 314 reports, there is not a single report of any of this. Now, there is, however, a report. 2 of them. First one, report 52. Right there. It was wrote up on 12/4/2022. And it's Payne. And Payne is saying that at approximately 1700 hours, which would be 5 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock there, it's going to be dark. On 11/24. See that? Now, before we move any further, whoopsies. Let's bring in none other than here. Oh, we'll just play it.
It is a piece of potential evidence everybody is talking about online. The glove that the police almost missed. It was dropped, or it was thrown out outside the home where the 4 college students were stabbed to death in Moscow. And there is a good chance that it would still be there right now. But for a former homicide detective turned podcaster who noticed it while he was actually visiting the scene on Thanksgiving, which is 11 days after the murders. Chris McDonough is a veteran of the Oceanside, California Police Department, and currently he's the director with the National Cold Case Foundation. He's also co-host of the podcast, The Interview Room, and he is live with me tonight. Detective, it's so good to have you. First of all, I am shaking my head as I even think I'm doing this interview with you. Take me there. Tell me what happened. You literally showed up and looked down and said, "Hello, gentlemen, come over here. Have you seen this?" Is that really how simple this was?
Yeah, it really was, Ashley. I mean, it was my wife and I, it was Thanksgiving Day. We happened to be up here in Idaho. And I said to her, I said, "Hey, let's just go over where that, situation's taking place at the university to get some tape." And we're walking up the street. And the first thing that caught my attention, to be honest with you, was all of the cars still parked on the property. And then I looked over and I saw there was an officer controlling the scene sitting in his vehicle. And I looked to the left and I saw that what appeared to be a glove And I looked at my wife and I said, is that a glove? And she goes, yeah, I think it is. And so about where Bryan was standing tonight, I walked over and looked over, and sure enough, it was a glove. And I immediately got
you know what I'm going to
do?
Now, he goes on his own podcast on 11/27/2022 and makes this announcement. Then on 12/12, a week after the white Honda Elantra begins its craze, right? 12/12, Ashley Banfield has him on. And the first thing that's really important to this man is to go on Ashley Banfield. And literally he's traveling around in something, and he lays right here his little 100,000 person plaque, subscriber plaque. Woo! Woo! Congratulations, Chris. You have 100,000 subscribers. That's what that is. He lays this on his couch so that it's in the video. The video of that's a clip from this Banfield shit. Okay. So woo. Okay. Sets up the stage so that he can show his platinum plaque. Okay. Then this is December 12th. This man aired on December 12th, 2022 by MSM. FBI and local PD got ahead of fake love, in my opinion, by putting out the craze of the white Elantra. We can't have this guy go talking. People probably say glove, blah, blah, blah. December 7th, remember, MPD gave Elantra info to say, hey, can you guys help us? Meanwhile, we all know now they didn't need no help. Okay. These are different clips from November 24th. He says this is when this happened. And this is what Ashley Banfield's using his footage. Retired detective found a glove at the scene. Okay. Did the killer drop a glove while escaping? Okay, all of this. Then I went and got a nice screenshot of, well, this has been viewed so far by 417,000 people. This is when it aired, just to show everybody. Chris McDonough, a retired homicide detective, found a glove outside the Idaho crime scene where 4 students were murdered. When this first aired, guess who was the first person that said, not so fast? Guess who's the first person that said, did Chris McDonough plant the glove? Ready? JLR. Chris, answer the phone call. Show your photos of police collection. Wow. YouTube plaque. Woo! Laying on the couch, baby. Whoa. Breaking news. So is Chris saying that officer, detective, lead investigator in this case lied and falsified reports? What I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, Officer Payne authored a report. As such, he authored 2 of them. So, once I completed these runs, I drove to 1122 King Road and walked the route that Molly McMichael stated she took while on foot near the house. So this would have been happening while Chris McDonough was there. Officer Payne is test driving the undercover car. That's what the school car is, the silver Ford Fusion. Who was driving the route of the suspected killer. Officer Payne said he drove 2 separate routes in front of the camera located at 1125 Ridge Road, once westbound doing all this crap. Then he decides to go over and starts walking the area like Molly McMichael would have. Okay. I also parked the MPD school car on Queen Road, immediately to the east of 1122 King Road, in order to observe the effects of the orange tinted streetlights located in the area. That would have been at nighttime, right? If you want to see how the streetlights are working, now look at this. At approximately 5, he started all this. 5, that means it's dark out. That means it's dark out because he's using it to do the lighting with the car. Okay. Chris is saying that he was filming when the police collected the glove. Okay. That means it would be dark outside. There is not a video that I've ever seen Chris show where it was dark outside. Now, the lights appeared to make the silver vehicle look tanner in color than it would under the white streetlights. Now, Payne continues to say, I also walked down and spoke to Officer Tisdall, who was providing scene security at this time. I spoke to Officer Tisdall for a moment and then began to walk back to my patrol vehicle. As I did so, I noticed a black glove lying in the parking lot, not nestled in the grass, in the leaves, by the trash can. I noticed a black glove lying in the parking lot approximately 25 feet from the front door. The glove was lying palm up and appeared to have been lying in that spot for a couple of days, as it did not have any snow on it. I nudged the glove with my toe of my boot and found it was frozen to the ground. I asked Officer Tisdall for rubber gloves and his flashlight. Upon further examination, there appeared to be a dark fluid-like substance on the glove. This substance, color, and consistency was consistent with dried blood. Officer Tisdall provided me with an evidence bag, and I collected the glove. The glove is a Polar Penguin brand glove with a rubberized palm and fingers. This type of glove is often used for concrete work. I brought the glove back to the MPD and booked it into the MPD evidence for submission to the state lab. That is nothing what that glove looked like that Chris had. Not only does Officer Payne file this report, okay, which is basically calling either Chris McDonough is calling him a liar, or he is calling Chris a liar, right? He then continues to write an additional report on the matter, which was on January 11, 2023, in follow-up with the investigation of this glove. On November 24, 2022, I collected a black Polar Penguin glove from the parking lot, again, the parking lot of 1122 King Road. He does not say that some civilian found it. He does not say that some ex-detective homicide guy found it. Okay. I conducted subsequent investigation by watching the BWC body-worn camera of Officer Noonans, the first MPD officer on scene, and looking over the scene photos taken, so scene photos as well as his body cam. None of these sources showed the glove was present upon officers' initial response to the scene or during the processing of the scene on November 13th, 2022. It is unclear where the glove came from at the time of this writing. Mainstream media has used this man as their source. Court TV, News Nation, Nancy Grace, Law, whatever, heavy hitter on News Nation, and for the purposes of what they can label as this man is an ex-homicide detective. Y'all don't want to have someone like me on your show, but y'all are going to have someone like this on your show. Because basically what I've just proven here today is that Officer Payne either lied in his police reports, or this man, for clicks and views, lied, and potentially could have obstructed justice, okay? Because Ann Taylor used this glove was part of her argument. Inserter. It is not the interview room. It is the inserter room.
I am going to, Chris, thank you for saying that. When we go back to Bryan in a little bit, I'm going to actually ask him to walk me to the exact spot so that everybody who's watching right now gets the full perspective. Sometimes it's hard when you're watching through a one-dimensional TV screen. So I'm going to do that. In the meantime, help me out with this one, because you're the murder detective, but you're also the person who found it. What kind of glove was it, and the significance of the kind of glove as pertains to a murder?
Well, I can't really tell what type of glove it is, if it's a male, female. And obviously the significance may be nothing, but it also could be very significant. There appeared to have snow on it, so I assumed it had been there for, quite some time, at least, before the earlier snowfall. I later learned there are...
Okay. 1 second here. Okay, ready? What did he just say there? He saw snow on it? Okay. The glove was laying palm up and appeared to have been laying in that spot for a couple of days, as it did not have any snow on it.
Photographs of that glove floating online, and you can clearly see it there. And, I was unaware of those at the time. And when I told the officer, I waved him over and I said, "Hey, you need to come take a look at this." And he walked over, and his first words were, "Oh, wow." And I said, "Yeah," and I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm a retired homicide guy. You probably want to collect that, get your evidence people out here to do that." And he took some photographs of it, and I assumed that they, had collected it. I videotaped him doing it just in case.
There it is.
Taking the photographs.
Okay, I want to see the video. The public is demanding to see the video of them collecting the glove. That's all. We want to put it to rest. I'd want to put it to rest. This report is contradicting everything that was said to News Nation on December 12th, 2022. Who's right?
But yeah, it was crazy. It was just sitting there.
And this is, to be clear, it's inside the crime tape. This was not something that you discovered outside the crime tape, but they weren't watching, they weren't looking for it. So they'd had 11 days to scour the outside of the property. And I need to remind our viewers that you're from California, where one of the biggest first cases of my career happened, and a bloody glove was the significant piece of evidence in O.J. Simpson's case, which is why we don't make light of something that's just maybe looks like garbage. Certainly that's just a couple dozen feet from the front door.
Yeah, I mean, the significance of it, is unknown at this point. Obviously, if it is involved, then it could be, very important. If it's not, then, at least you have it and you can put it into evidence, just to say it's there. So, the officer, in my opinion, said he was going to bring the evidence folks to come collect it. And I hope they did that.
Wait a second. He just said 2 seconds ago that he took pictures of them collecting it. Then in the interview, he contradicts himself in the interview and says, well, the guy said he was going to bring the evidence people here to collect it. I hope that he collected it. Excuse me? You just said, literally, this clip is only 5 minutes and 38 seconds. Within 5 minutes and 38 seconds, What the fuck?
To be honest with you.
So the other key part here is that you, as a homicide,
Said he was going to bring the evidence folks to come collect it. And I hope they did that, to be honest with you.
He realizes what of a shit storm he got himself into. Okay. This is absolutely unacceptable. Okay. And I want to know, I don't know who's not telling the truth. What I do is I bring it to say, just like my title says, Chris McDonough's MSM horror tour exposes lead detective's false police reporting. Because based on Chris McDonough's statements on his horror tour, MSM tour, December 12th, 2022, okay, he is basically saying that Officer Payne, right here, this is a falsified police report. And so is the report. There's two reports that have to do about the same thing. Based on the location of it. Again.
and this is, to be clear, it's inside the crime tape. This was not something that you discovered outside the crime tape, that they weren't watching, they weren't looking for it. So they'd had 11 days to scour the outside of the property. And I need to remind our viewers that you're from California, where one of the biggest first cases of my career happened, and a bloody glove was the significant piece of evidence in O.J. Simpson's case, which is why we don't make light of something that's just maybe looks like garbage. Certainly that's just a couple dozen feet from the front door.
Yeah, I mean, the significance of it, is unknown at this point. Obviously, if it is involved, then it could be, very important. If it's not, then, at least you have it and you can put it into evidence. Just to say it's there. The officer, in my opinion, said he was going to bring the evidence folks to come collect it. And I hope they did that, to be honest with you.
Okay. Now we go back to here.
Situations taking place
where he speaks. He's hoping that they do it. Earlier in the interview, 2 minutes before that, this is what he says.
So good to have you. First of all, I am shaking my head as I even think I'm doing this interview with you. Take me there. Tell me what happened. You literally showed up and looked down and said, hello, gentlemen, come over here. Have you seen this? Is that really how simple this was?
Yeah, it really was, Ashley. I mean, it was my wife and I, it was Thanksgiving Day. We happened to be up here in Idaho. And I said to her, hey, let's just go over where that, situations taking place at the university to get some tape. And we're walking up the street, and the first thing that caught my attention, to be honest with you, was all of the cars still parked on the property. And then I looked over and I saw there was an officer controlling the scene sitting in his vehicle. And I looked to the left and I saw that what appeared to be a glove. And I looked at my wife and I said, is that a glove? And she goes, yeah, I think it is. And so about where Bryan was standing tonight, I walked over and looked over, and sure enough, it was a glove. And I immediately
you know what I'm going to do? I am going to, Chris, thank you for saying that. When we go back to Bryan in a little bit, I'm going to actually ask him to walk me to the exact spot so that everybody who's watching right now gets the full perspective. Sometimes it's hard when you're watching through a one-dimensional TV screen. So I'm going to do that. In the meantime, help me out with this one, because you're the murder detective, but you're also the person who found it. What kind of glove was it, and the significance of the kind of glove as pertains to a murder?
Well, I can't really tell what type of glove it is, if it's a male, female. And obviously the significance may be nothing, but it also could be very significant. There appeared to have snow on it, so I assumed it had been there for, quite some time, at least, before the earlier snowfall. I later learned there are photographs of that glove floating online, and you can clearly see it there. And, I was unaware of those at the time. And when I told the officer, I waved him over and I said, hey, you need to come take a look at this. And he walked over, and his first words were, oh, wow. And I said, yeah, and I told him, I said, hey, I'm a retired homicide guy. You probably want to collect that, get your evidence people out here to do that. And he took some photographs of it, and I assumed that they, had collected it. I videotaped him doing it just in case, at least taking the photographs. But yeah, it was crazy. It was just sitting there.
And this is, to be clear, it's inside.
So he's saying that he photographed somebody taking pictures of this glove. Okay. When? During, don't you think those would have surfaced? Okay. All that's going to end up happening here is that either Chris McDonough is going to speak out and he's going to show, hey, yeah, that this report right here, it's false. That's all I want to have happen here. This report is false. Do the right thing, Chris. Tell them that this report is false, that you found the glove. Okay. They should have interviewed you about it, right? They didn't. I don't know. Maybe you ran from the scene. Who knows? After you planted it. I don't know if you planted it. But they are interviewing strippers. In the 314 reports, one of them is a tip from a dancer. So what this should tell you is that these officers have no problem lying. And I have no idea why a ex-homicide detective is not out here saying, okay, this is a little crazy here. This is not how this played out. Why is Officer Payne lying in a police report? Payne doesn't say that some random passerby waved down Officer Tisdale to point out this, because that's what you would want to be putting. Think about it. You'd want to put that in this report to show that the glove, we can kind of question where this glove, just some random guy came by. You know what I mean? Now, if you actually go to listen to Chris's explanation on his video, it's a little different.
Obviously, they didn't know about it because he came. This is a good thing.
So you could just visibly see it right from the road.
Yeah, and so a couple thoughts come to mind. I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, right? I'm saying, fortunately, it's still on the other side of the tape, and so they still had control of that scene. The officer that was there, obviously, they didn't know about it because he came over and photographed it, and he talked to the head evidence tech, and immediately, later they'd come out and got it.
How would he know anything about that? He's talked to the main evidence tech. Did you see that? Because in the Ashley Banfield episode, he says, well, I don't know. I hope that he called somebody out there and had him collect it, right?
So here's the question. Is this from the night? Is it random? I.e., somebody missed the trash can and they were walking by.
Okay, so then check this part out. Now, going back to Payne's report, this is where it's like, yeah, this is a problem. If you go to the second report that he wrote up about it, Payne goes even as far as to say, listen, Payne's going to double down. And Payne's going to say that I looked at Noonan's body cam and I looked at crime scene photos. And that glove is not present in any of those sources for November 13th. But we have a problem here. Because where Chris takes the picture and shows that's where the glove is, that is not where Officer Payne says that the glove is. Officer Payne says the glove is in the pavement, 25 feet from the front door. No snow on it whatsoever. But that it's frozen to the ground because he goes to kick it with his boot and had to tap it that way. And then as he's collecting it, sees that there is a substance that's consistent with being blood. And that it's a concrete type glove that you would, and it was palm up. November 24th, Chris's glove. Right here. Nestled in the grass and leaves with snow on it. And if I was Chris, this is what I would be saying. I'd be calling up Moscow Police Department, and I would be saying, well, first of all, when I would have been there, if I was ex-homicide detective, I would have probably been like, hey, do you need to interview me for like pointing this out? I'm the reason that guy even called you over here that day. Because what Officer Payne makes it seem like is that he was just going about his business, doing the things that he needed to do on this day, which was driving, the Ford Fusion around. And this was all happening at a certain time of night because what he was testing was the lighting of the car when Molly would have seen what color car this would have been, and seeing how the orange lights reflect on the Ford Fusion. And he was walking the route that Molly would have walked, things like that. And that he's saying that he's doing this at about 5. And then as he's finishing that, he decides, I'm going to go over to walk over and talk to Officer Tisdale. Not that I was called over because a civilian found a glove. Okay. And I need to collect evidence, because guess what? He didn't even go there with the evidence bag. When he's saying that he brought out, he called over an evidence technician. No. As far as Payne's concerned here, and what Payne says is that Officer Tisdale was the one with the evidence bag. He's saying, I noticed the glove. After he talked to him, he didn't say, Officer Tisdale said, hey, you need to come over here and see this. Okay. I spoke to Officer Tisdale for a moment and then began to walk back to my patrol vehicle. As I did so, I noticed a black glove lying in the parking lot, approximately 25 feet from the front door. The glove was laying palm up, appeared to have been laying in that spot for a couple of days, as it did not have any snow on it. I nudged the glove with the toe of my boot and found it was frozen to the ground. I asked Officer Tisdale for rubber gloves and his flashlight. Upon further examination, there appeared to be a dark fluid-like substance on the glove. This substance's color and consistency was consistent with dried blood. Officer Tisdale provided me with an evidence bag. The glove is a Polar Penguin brand glove with a rubberized palm and fingers. This type of glove is often used for concrete work. I brought the glove back to the MPD and booked it. So all I personally believe here is, my belief, my opinion, is that you have an ex-homicide cop and you have a badge still. One of them lying. A cop is lying. That's what I know. And that's all I got. One of these cops is lying. Fuck, maybe both of them, right? But nowhere is Chris a witness. Nowhere is Chris. Did Chris go to the police department to say, hey, I want to, I was down there earlier and I think maybe I should make a witness statement because I don't know, I found something. And no, instead, Chris just goes out on his podcast on 11/27 and tells the world about this. And then literally goes on to criticize, like you would not believe, the Moscow Police Department. Then once there's an arrest, then he does the same thing that he did in the Michael Crow case, which was nobody is ever innocent until proven guilty. Okay. Nobody is ever innocent until proven guilty, right? We just make him false confess. We lie about the scene. We will do whatever. And you did it to 14-year-olds. And now here we are all these years later, you know what they say? Always a shipwreck. What? Once a shipwreck, always a shipwreck. Something like that. So your thoughts. Lana. This really upsets me. Lana, you're pissing me off. What the heck set you off? CM is not a liar. He's a righteous man. You're sounding a bit crazy, girl. Please stop. Well, Christy, I think you're the only person in this chat of 1,300 people that feels that way. Because what I just explained is Officer Payne could be the liar. Right? Not Chris. Chris went on his MSM horror tour, thank God, exposes the lead detective's false police report. And he did it not even realizing it back in December 12th of 2022. Right? Good, awesome, perfect. So then exactly, Lana, I watched the film of Chris McDonough noticing the glove and called an officer over to investigate. Exactly. So then who's lying? Payne, right? Well, don't you think that if you're Chris, you should probably, like, I don't know, point this out and say, I cannot believe that they lied? This is not how this happened at all. No? Someone is lying. That's the point. One of them is omitting key factual evidence. And so all I'm saying is I'm presenting you with, because, you know, some people haven't gone through the whole discovery like myself yet. So maybe Chris doesn't even realize this yet. And now he's like, oh my God, wow. Or maybe it could shed a light that, wow, I found a glove. And here's my picture of my glove. And this is the one I thought that they would have collected. And then come to find out, Payne's description of his glove that he found, that cannot be the glove that I found. And so we found two different gloves on the same day. Everybody wants to know, everybody has questions about the Idaho4 case, okay? And we finally get the material, the MPD, the reports, okay? And let's point out something. Ready for this? This is going to be like, this should just blow your minds. All right. When Payne wrote this report up, it's 12/4/2022. There's no going back. He puts this report out before Chris McDonough does his world tour. He goes on Ashley Banfield to show this on December 12th. So there's no going back on this report. And what Payne put in this report, I believe, is absolute bullshit. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. He has no idea. Chris has no idea what Officer Payne wrote in his report. None. He comes out, though, to tell the world what he discovered here. Now, fast forward to where we are now, and the luxury that we have, which is, wait a second, when was that second report done? Oh, wait, right here. Then Payne, knowing the fuckerage that he's in, he has to write up a second report after Chris does his MSM horror tour, okay? On 1/11/2023. And in this report, he then goes as far as to say that he wants to bring up that November 24th incident. And he says, I collected a polar penguin glove from the parking lot of 1122 King Road. I conducted subsequent investigation by watching the body-worn camera. He's doubling down on his shit. Of Officer Noonan's, we have no idea. Like, someone's going to have to go through that and watch it. the first MPD officer on scene, and looking over the scene photos taken by ISP forensic team, none of these sources showed the glove was present upon officer's initial response. But the question is where is he actually looking? If Payne lied about the location of the glove, okay, Ann Taylor wouldn't have known this, right? The location of the glove, he's acting like it's in the middle, somewhere in the driveway. He's putting the glove in a different location on purpose, okay, than really where it was, because that way when he goes, what? To do exactly what he would do here, which is, oh, I went and got the body cam. This is where the glove was, and look at nothing was there. And so reading this, Chris McDonough should be like, that's not where the glove was. The glove wasn't, that fucking glove wasn't in the driveway. We have pictures of the glove. This is where I thought it was nestled in the, he was quoted, he was interviewed by The Independent. And he said the glove was in quotes. I'll quote him. And it is 45 feet from the trash can to the door. Thank you, Mark. I love a man that loves numbers. He says to The Independent, in quotes, retired. So speculation is now growing around a mystery item found at the crime scene in the days after the murder. Retired homicide detective and podcaster Chris McDonough claimed that he found a single black glove outside the house on King Road on November 28th. So I don't know if The Independent got that wrong or if he wanted to get away from that whole date. And that after pointing it out to law enforcement, it appeared that the police were not aware of it before then. In a video posted on his YouTube channel, Mr. McDonough showed the glove nestled among leaves in the snow outside the student rental home. In quotes. Now this is where the quotes come. I actually found a glove and turned it in. I actually found a glove and turned it. Turned it. I turned it. Then I had a review. I was like, wait a second. Does it say turned it or turned it in? I was like, oh my gosh. He says, I actually found a glove and turned it, comma. I pointed it out to the officer who was. So then he's saying to this in this quotes, which is in The Independent, saying that basically he turned it. Like, you know how you turn a glove over? And that I turned it. I pointed it out to the officer who was there securing the scene, and they came and they collected it. He said, in quotes, the officer that was there, obviously they didn't know about it because he came over and photographed it and he talked to the evidence. They had evidence tech, and immediately, later they came out and got it. End quote. The discovery has raised questions surrounding whether the glove may have been there on November 13th, the night of the killings, and who it may belong to. Is it from the night? ? Is it random? Somebody missed the trash can and they were walking by. Is the suspect taunting the authorities by, placing something like this hypothetically? In quotes, and this is what McDonough asked his viewers. Meanwhile, authorities are still looking to speak to the driver of a mystery white vehicle spotted near the crime scene at the time of the murders. Moscow Police Department is furious over the ever-growing rumor mill. But by God, we have to make sure that that's in the video. I'll be sure to answer all your questions. It's just somebody's not being truthful. Okay. And it's clear as can be that we have a completely, first of all, Payne says he found the glove. He didn't. Chris found the glove, right? Then the police aren't interested in interviewing the person that found the glove to make sure that, hey, can we get your DNA to exclude if you touch this glove and you put it here? Because we're going to need to do that. Like, we're checking everything. Lana, darling, it is over. Give it up. Yes, he is awful. You are right. Get a new case. I love your brain. Give what up? Exposing a lie for the first time? I've never even talked about this. But please send me an email and show me where somebody has pointed this out. But I can't give up anything I haven't even started. But yeah. Fucked up when JLR is the most trustworthy of the group. That's great right there. Eagle, stars, and stripes. Woo! At Truth and Transparency sent the real picture of the glove. Throw it up on Hector. Yeah, we got it. Funny. What else do we have here? Susan, welcome. Susan Sharp, ouch. Welcome. Mom B, super sticker. Mom B. Lana bringing it again and again. Is that right? That's right. Kelly Flanagan, welcome. Jessa, welcome. Donna, welcome. And the super sticker for $10. Lindsay Mace, member for 16 months, 1,000%. Yeah, bringing it to light, baby. Woo, woo. 16 months. That's a long time. All right. Yes. Okay. Answer the call. We're going to leave a voicemail on Payne's voicemail box. But first, yep, that's all. Carson's hockey's mom. 26 months. Look out. Look out. Moscow Police Department. A to Z, I adore you, especially the Delphi coverage. Yes, the Delphi coverage. Oh, nobody said he's innocent. This is like the Delphi case, rights were violated. This case, it's actually just came out with the interview of Nye. I could not believe what I heard. Pretty wild. I need to leave a message though for. We need to get a call back. Okay. Hi, yes. Can I just be connected to the Moscow Police Department, to the actually voicemail box of Officer Detective Payne?
One moment for me. Their admin office is closed.
Okay.
1 second for me.
Yeah, anything that has just like a voicemail.
Yeah, you might need to call tomorrow. I'm sorry, actually, on a business day, which would be Monday at 8 is when they open. Because I don't have access to. We're just a contract agency.
Okay.
I don't have access to like getting you to their like voicemails.
Okay. I understand that. So just call back on like a Monday then?
Yeah, Monday at 8 a.m. They're open from 8 a.m. to 5.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your help. Okay, have a good one. All right. But we'll just get this cleared up on Monday, I guess. All right. Next, here you go. This is why the Attorney General's office was brought in on the case. So here you go. Oh boy. Okay.
Is investigating.
Judge did end up letting it in. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. And when you say the way they, Mr.
Okay.
Stakes couldn't have been higher with respect to the evidence pointing to the defendant.
Okay.
When the defense moved for that in this case,
Here's why the AGs came in.
it was essential to the case. I think something you need to understand about the investigative genetic genealogy is this was an issue of first impression in Idaho. So no court had addressed a constitutional challenge to the use of investigative genetic genealogy. And when the defense moved for that in this case, everyone understood that what they were seeking was to try and keep the DNA out of the trial. But I don't know that everyone fully understood that the way the Fourth Amendment works, if the state were to lose that argument, you don't just lose the evidence itself, you lose anything that came from that evidence. You may have heard the phrase fruit of the poisonous tree. And in this case, because the investigative genetic genealogy is how they identified the defendant, that would have meant virtually everything. The stakes couldn't have been higher with respect to the evidence pointing to the defendant. If you watch, when I did the oral argument in that, Judge.
Okay. He just said it right there. The identification of the defendant came from investigative genetic genealogy. He literally just said this. This is a brand new interview. And I'm just like, when I was watching this, I was like, wait, what? Is he really saying that? Because that's what I've been saying since the beginning, which is there is no way that you can leave that off the ticket for probable cause because everything flowed from it. You cannot develop probable cause by making it up that you got to him some other way. Okay. That's why I'm just like, how is this? I mean, wow, I can't believe, in a sense, you're lying about how you develop probable cause to obtain an arrest warrant, okay, which then allowed you to get his DNA. And they went so much as to say that it wasn't just that, but then within it, because they had to reverse engineer this, that then they lied about what the findings truly were and what they knew at the time of authoring that probable cause affidavit, which was his phone didn't turn off at 2:47. Okay. We didn't identify him from the queries by the WSU officers. Okay. And I think this is going to be a case that's talked about for a really, really long time because of the orders, because of the arguments and then the orders.
Kipler's very last question to me was, Mr. Nye, if the FBI did in fact violate Mr. Kohberger's constitutional rights, you would agree that that would burden the state, is the way he phrased it. And what I understood him to be asking, and what I believe he was asking was, you agree with me that if I find that this was a violation of the Constitution, you lose everything, pointing to the defendant. And I said,
I thought what Hitler meant from it was that it's if the it's if the FBI violated any portion of what they did. Not just the investigative genetic genealogy, but anything that they were involved in. And I can run it back and I can play it for you, because that's when Ashley Jennings is literally doing cartwheels to try to explain that, okay, so let's say that the probable cause was off 8 minutes or 7 minutes. And then she's going down that argument. And it's like, wait, what? And that's where even Hitler was just like, I was afraid you were going to say, like, when he was talking about stuff, I was afraid you were going to say that. I was afraid you were going to talk about this extra tower, you know? And so Nye's just saying
yes. So that the stakes were pretty high on that one.
That huge. So
yes, as a violation of the Constitution, you lose everything, pointing to the defendant. And I said yes.
Because you're acknowledging that everything flows from what? You would lose everything because of what? Because it's fruit of the poisonous tree.
So that the stakes were pretty high on that one.
that huge. So just to summarize, in case people missed that part of the build up to the trial, is the defense was saying that the DNA, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, was obtained illegally or unconstitutionally. Therefore, it should not be admitted as evidence. The prosecution, your team, was saying it should be admitted as evidence that it was constitutional in the way that they obtained it. And the judge did end up letting it in. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. And when you say the way they obtained it, we're talking, they had several different arguments along.
I'm so glad that he said that. I'm so glad right there that he said that. They had so many different arguments because it wasn't just that portion. Like, and he says it right there. He's like, they had so many different arguments.
Along the path. But yes, they were arguing about the way they found him was the DNA that was on the knife sheath. There was single source male DNA. They didn't have anyone they could connect to that DNA, so they didn't have anyone to test to compare it to. Traditionally, when you're doing DNA testing in the criminal world, you have an individual, you have the DNA from the item, and you can compare those two things. Here they had DNA, but they didn't have the individual. So
that's actually, I don't agree with that. What do you mean? That happens in every case. When you have DNA at the scene, okay, and you put it into CODIS and you don't get a match, that's what happens all the time. Okay, that's what happens all the time. So there's nothing new with that. Then you're trying to figure out, okay, well, shit, this DNA doesn't match anybody, right? And so here is where it's like, the argument isn't that you went out and did this, it's that this is what led you to him, and it's nowhere in the probable cause. And so what Ann Taylor's argument was, and I cannot believe that he's coming out here and saying this, because that's what Hitler basically said, is that no, that's not, that they got to him other ways. Just because they didn't put it in there. And it's just like, well, I cannot believe that you're saying this right now. And now, so here we are, fast forward to this point, because that was the argument back then. Fast forward to this point, it's just, people are just talking about it so openly as to say, that is the only way that we got to him. And I'm just like, wait a second. I did watch everything in its entirety multiple times. I'm not going to sit here and get lit, like gaslit. Like,
how do you find them? Well, that's where investigative genetic genealogy comes in. And they literally they reverse engineer a genetic family tree to figure out who could this person be. And then they get a warrant to arrest that person. Now,
but that's what you didn't do. Like, well, how did you test it? How did you test to see your investigative genetic genealogy lead? He's skipping parts there.
First engineer a genetic family tree to figure out who could this person be, and then they get a warrant to arrest that person. Now they have the person and they can compare it to the DNA. And so, because that's the way they use to find the defendant in this.
But how did you get the warrant to test, to get his, how did you get the warrant to obtain his DNA? because you had a probable cause affidavit written up saying that you got to him X, Y, and Z, and that this is what led you to probable cause that he did it, that he's the killer. You understand, like, where I'm just trying to say, well, wait.
Genealogy comes in, and they literally do, they reverse engineer a genetic family tree to figure out who could this person be, and then they get a warrant to arrest that person. Now they have the person and they can compare it to the DNA.
And I'm all for investigative genetic genealogy. All for it. The only thing here is that they didn't put it in the probable cause like other cases where they have put it in the probable cause, because that's what led you to the person. Like, that's what developed probable cause. And so trying to explain it any other way in a probable cause affidavit without mentioning that is a lie. That's my point. Because you didn't develop probable cause because of that, because of what you're writing. And then on top of it, when you come to find out that, oh my God, not only did they, but then like they're lying about the material that actually they did put in the probable cause. And so the issues I have with it is that, dude, we have to ask ourselves if the end justifies the means. And I don't believe that ever the ends will justify the means of violating our rights. That's my take. Now, as a parent of, like, do you think I want a killer to be out there? Absolutely not. I would have been like, you're not going to let this person out of your sight for the rest of your life. And you guys are going to babysit this person until we can, you know, like, get him on a different felony. And then we're therefore his DNA would go into the system. And then boom, we're going to get a hit on CODIS.
And so, because that's the way they used to find the defendant in this case, all of the evidence was fruit of those actions. And so, again, if we had lost that motion, it would have been devastating to the case.
Well, and not only this case, but in future cases, right? Couldn't future cases point to this one as precedent and say,
this is precedent now. That's
wasn't allowed in then, it shouldn't be allowed in now.
Absolutely. From a legal perspective as well, it was a really big deal to set the legal landscape on, is investigative genetic genealogy going to be allowed in Idaho's court system?
But see, oh my God. Wait a second, though. It wasn't in the probable cause, though. So what the real question is are we going to continue to allow them to lie in probable cause affidavits and not? We should ask this question. Why couldn't you just put it in the probable cause affidavit that you use investigative genetic genealogy? Why? What's the problem? It's such a great tool. Why can't we acknowledge the great tool? Why can't we admit to this great tool and say, wow, hey, guess what, guys? You might want to think twice about committing a crime now, because shit, for your first time, because guess what? We don't have to just stick with CODIS anymore. We have another way to test discarded DNA at crime scenes. Why would, like, that's to me what would make something precedent. Here in this case, what you're making precedent is it's okay to use investigative genetic genealogy when you don't tell anybody, and that you can manufacture and get away with lying in a probable cause affidavit. And I just think that that's just that's how we should be getting like the reliability, the trust in that. We're supposed to trust the government.
There are other.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say there are other courts in other states that have addressed it. Not very many at this point, but it has been addressed. But this was the first time that it was addressed in an Idaho court. Is Judge Hippler's well-written decision.
Yeah. Were you nervous going in for that argument and preparing the brief?
Yeah, I was. I'm always a little bit nervous when I argue. I think on this one, I was very confident in our legal position. We stand by the technique. We stand by law enforcement using that technique.
Then
it is constitutional.
Then why not talk? Then why not put it in your probable cause? If he doesn't ask this question.
But when the stakes are as high as they are, then yeah, I'm always a little bit nervous about it.
No, you're gaslighting us right now, because that's not what you were nervous about. What you were nervous about is the destruction of your probable cause affidavit right in front of your face, and that's why you had to hide the issue with the timing advanced. Is because every facet of the probable cause affidavit was not factual. It was manufactured. That's where the fear came in. Because if, like he just said, investigative genetic genealogy is a great tool and it's constitutional to use it, then why did you, if it's constitutional to use investigative genetic genealogy, then why aren't you saying that you use investigative genetic genealogy? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I just don't know who would watch this, but I get it. Like 90% of America is going to watch him and think like, oh my God, he just explained it. Well, no, he didn't explain it. Sorry. He didn't explain the situation, the real nature of the situation.
You mentioned the change of venue being one of the other issues your office dealt with. Why was that so important to move the trial so far from where the crimes happened?
He didn't.
Yeah, the change of venue was an interesting issue.
Wait, what? Dude, was he not following the case? This is the question that he asks him? Ann Taylor she's the one that put the motion, the defense put the motion in for change of venue. The prosecution didn't ask for it. I just can't believe this. Like, this is so unbelievable. That question, I thought that he followed this case. He must have been too into Ballo that he doesn't know this. To interview somebody and not know this is not good.
It was addressed in an Idaho court. Is
just going in for that argument and preparing.
I think on this one, I'm
going in for that argument and preparing the brief.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit nervous. Legal position. We stand by constitutional, but when the stakes are as high as they are, then yeah, I'm always a little bit nervous about it.
Here's the question.
You mentioned the change of venue being one of the other issues your office dealt with. Why was that so important to move the trial so far from where the crimes happened?
Yeah, the change of venue was an interesting issue in this case. I think everybody watching kind of had an intuitive sense of why you may want to move it. This crime affected these horrific crimes.
Oh my God. Well, how come you guys wanted to keep it in? They didn't want it moved. Holy shit. I'm just totally like, wow. Wow. Making it seem like the state moved this case.
Affected the community directly there. There were students at the University of Idaho, which is a big part of the community there. And so the defense's argument was, in order to get a fair jury, we need to move this.
Well, how do you feel about that?
And the state's position wasn't full disagreement with that. The state's position was, we should try to seat a jury and see if we can get one. And if not, then we can change venue. But ultimately, the judge decided, let's just go ahead.
Well, but the argument with that is, though, you would then go all the way to the end with the same judge, right? And try to seat a jury, right? And then you can't, right? And then so when you have to switch venues, then what the judge has to go with, you get what I'm saying? Which would have actually played out better for Ann Taylor. But that's what Ann Taylor was basically, her argument was, is that well, if we wait and do this at the end, wait, what? Like, you want to decide this now and to move it out last minute to have a judge, you know? And I think that what's his name didn't want any part of that. You know, Judge could have been like, well, no, I'm going to deny this, but I'll say this: if we can't seat a jury, then we can go, and I'm going to uproot myself for 3 months. You think the judge is
ahead and change it to be safe, and that's why it was moved to Ada County.
Over all the months and months you spent working on this, what would you say is the biggest surprise that you found?
The biggest surprise, I would say,
good question,
would be the guilty plea at the end. I think that was a surprise for me. Now, you have to understand the role that we were playing in the case again. Latah County was making all of the decisions, and they were the ones who were engaging with the defense team. I wasn't involved in those conversations, but
oh my God, what? I would have been surprised too if I was you. Like, wait, what? Oh my God.
I was consulted, I guess you would say, on my thoughts and opinions and other things. And so I wasn't shocked in the sense that at the change of plea hearing, I knew what was going to be happening. But leading up to that, every indication I had seen and believed was that the defendant had no interest in pleading guilty and wanted a trial, and believed that he could be vindicated at that trial. That was just kind of my assumptions and reading the tea leaves, if you will. And so that, I would say, that was probably the biggest surprise, that that's how it ended.
Yeah, I think it was a surprise for many, many people. Do you think it was because all of these motions against the defense came down against them leading up to trial? Do you think that that maybe put pressure on, Bryan Kohberger to take a plea agreement?
I do think that that is at least part of the calculation. I can't in any way speak to his motivations or why he decided at the end. Obviously, I've never spoken to him about it. I don't know why his attorneys, what they advised, if anything. So anything it's kind of just speculation on my part. But
thank you, Grace.
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons that they bring challenges to things like the death penalty is to try and chip away at as much as they can from the state side, and any leverage that the state would have. And so, yeah, I mean, that the way you resolved this was by giving up the death penalty in exchange for guilty pleas to everything in the indictment and maximum penalties on every charge. And so at the end of the day, protecting the death penalty meant something to that resolution.
I want to ask you, and I don't know if you're the one that would be able to speak to this, or it might be somebody else, but from what we understand, the plea agreement was no appeals.
Okay,
you can't appeal. But Judge Hippler mentioned that he had I think 42 days or something if he wanted to appeal, but then said that if he did, it might void the plea agreement. Can you explain that? Because I know a lot of our viewers were confused when the judge said, oh, you do have a certain amount of time to appeal.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm more than happy to handle this. And I just, for a little bit of background, I guess, for the viewers, in our division, in the criminal law division, I also supervise the appellate unit, and they handle all criminal appeals in the state of Idaho. And so if there were to be an appeal, it would come to our office and we would be the ones handling it. So that's kind of the background I'm coming from on this. So Judge Hippler was getting at a couple of different things. Let me start with the appeal waiver itself. It's not uncommon when a defendant pleads guilty to waive their appellate rights, and that's typically how it's phrased in the plea agreement. But what we know, and there's actually a case on this that came out of Idaho and was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court called Garza v. Idaho, is that a criminal defendant cannot actually waive all of their appellate rights. There is a narrow category of issues that you cannot waive. And really what that's focused on is the validity of the waiver itself. So while in this case, the defendant waived his appellate rights, that means he waived his right to challenge things like the change of venue, the IGG, motion to suppress, the challenge that he raised to the indictment. He doesn't get to challenge any of those. But what he can't waive is an attack on the validity of the plea agreement itself. And so he could raise a challenge. For example, he could claim that his attorney provided him ineffective assistance in advising him on the plea agreement. And if he were to win that, it would have to be that the court finds that he didn't enter that plea knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily. And so no matter what language you put in the plea agreement, you just cannot waive that. So that's part of what Judge Hippler was referring to. Then there's the second part you mentioned where Judge Hippler did make a comment about by filing a notice of appeal, you may actually violate your plea agreement. That one, I personally would consider a little bit more of an open issue as to whether or not that's something that the state could argue, that just by filing the notice of appeal, we could argue, well, now he's violated the plea agreement, so we want to go back, we want our trial, and we want to impose the death penalty. I guess we would just have to see how that one plays out.
That's what I see.
Came up.
I see.
Okay.
But if for some reason,
So I was talking to a couple people, and they always ask me, well, Lana, do you think he's got something up his sleeve? Okay. Like, do you think this was just and I said, I have no idea what that fucker has up his sleeve, but I will tell you this, that if he appeals within the 42 days, that the state is going to do exactly what he just said there, which is, well, we want to go to trial. He violated the plea agreement, and now we want to go to trial. Death penalties on the table, and carry on. Then my question is Ann Taylor allowed to withdraw, forcing then this to be geez, right? And then you have to get other so what if he wanted to do that, but then he was like, and I don't want her to represent me. Well, I want to go to trial, and I don't want her to represent me. And then you have to get another lawyer up to speed, and you're going to go to trial in like when? But then we'd get our trial, do it passe. That's what I'm all for. After reading these documents, I'm like, maybe Ann Taylor was ineffective. Like, whoa. No, I just the thought of all that for the victims' families is not, that's just that's a gut. That'd be horrible.
he does decide to appeal, as with all other cases, it does end up in your office.
Absolutely, it would, yes. And, another part to understand about waivers of any kind or appellate waivers, the court clerk at the Idaho Supreme Court is not going to refuse to accept an appeal from him just because he's waived it. You can really, as I've learned in my job, you can really file just about anything that you want to. The question is just, are you going to get anywhere with it? So let's say that the defendant here, Mr. Kohberger, decides to appeal and challenge the IGG ruling. Well, the response, he would be allowed to file that. The court's not going to stop him. But the response from our office would be to file a motion to dismiss that appeal, and we would cite to the plea agreement and say, he's waived this. And I'm confident that in that situation, the court would just dismiss the appeal.
What if he takes it to the higher court?
Going to be, if should that happen, it's going to be much quicker than some of these other cases.
Hold on. What if he takes it to the higher court because he cites that, how can somebody that was part of prosecuting me, be, I think what the question there would be like, so that you put your motion to deny, and it gets can you then take it to the higher level?
like the Daybell cases or whatever that take years to work their way through the courts.
Absolutely. And even in that narrow category that I talked about, of if he tried to challenge the validity of the plea agreement itself, even in that area, it's a very narrow area. And so it's not going to last for years and years. And if you watched the change of plea hearing, you saw how careful Judge Hippler was in asking all of those questions.
He really was.
That I think for a lot of lay people sound
Yes.
very repetitive.
No.
And you almost start rolling your eyes like, is he seriously asking that question again? But it's because he needs to be thorough so that the record is accurate, that no, he was in fact entering this plea of his own free will. There was no improper influences on him. And so if Mr. Kohberger were to raise that challenge now, we have that change of plea hearing transcript we can rely on to say he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah. Okay.
What about taking it to the higher court for the grand jury indictment, which now we know, based off of these 314 different reports, that the stuff that was known by Mowry, and he testified at the grand jury, and that he had nothing to do with developing and all the stuff with the phone, with Brian's phone and everything. So and where they got the reporting of that, like how he mapped everything, saying that they got it from Global Legal Demand and stuff like that, knowing that they didn't. Those were in the reports. And so it's just not truth. It's not true. They testified to things that were not true at the grand jury, like a ton of stuff.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation. There were so many people that were quite pleased or happy that this was a plea agreement, that the trial didn't happen, that he goes away, we don't hear about him. There were a few others that weren't, including one of the family members of the victims, and others that are saying they want the full story. They want it all to come out about what exactly happened, and where evidence might be, and maybe a motive would come out. Do you think
And see, for me, I care more about this procedure and this process that happened here, because take this and put it into a different case, okay? A case like Sheldon Jeter Jr. I mean, this is how you're obtaining indictments. This is how this isn't right. You should not have to violate our rights to do these things. And this is nothing. Take out the IGG, okay, and just look at the
we will ever get all of that versus had there been a trial?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question, because it's something that I've seen being talked about on social media and other places. And one of the criticisms that I've seen of Bill agreeing to accept these guilty pleas is exactly that, well, we want to find out what happened. But had this gone to trial, you would not have found that out. The public would not have found that out. There is no circumstance in which the defendant agrees to take the stand at his own trial and explain to the jury why he did something that he's trying to argue to them he didn't do at all. So
basically what you're doing is not answering that question, which is we really mean what we say. We could not prove we could not prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt.
you're not going to get it from him at the trial. You would just be relying on the evidence being presented by the state.
Exactly. Duh. Nobody out here in the world thinks that Bryan Kohberger is going to get up on the stand and tell the families and the public, hey, let me just tell you what really happened. Will you please not give me the death penalty now?
And Bill Thompson has been very clear about what that evidence does and does not show.
Wow, he's saying Bill Thompson has been very clear. Again, I just don't think that this man knows what Bill Thompson did at the beginning. Okay. Maybe Bill Thompson has been clear more recently. Okay. Which I think everybody just kind of can't believe, like, wow, you really didn't have anything. And that's kind of where the representation of why would you tell this man to take a plea deal based off of what Bill Thompson has disclosed to us. So
and as you heard, if you saw the press conference immediately after the sentencing, Bill, the lead investigators, they all confirmed we don't have evidence showing a motive. And so had this gone to trial, there wouldn't
you don't have that, as well as a lot of other things that you don't have,
somehow magically be new evidence that would suddenly explain why this happened. So to the extent, I understand that people have...
We want you to prove that it was him. And how you were able to determine that, because we ran down all of these other possibilities and we were able to write them off because, well, for example, the blood that's in the house. How about, for example, I want the maintenance man called to the stand, and I want Jack Showalter called to the stand, because I personally believe, this is my personal opinion, is that Jack Showalter did not call the maintenance man right after Payne was told that you're not getting a warrant to go into that room, to that house or apartment, unless the outside is tested positive for blood. And then all of a sudden, voila, it doesn't test positive for blood, but the maintenance man goes inside that house, in that apartment, and then happens to call the police. This is right afterwards, and says, hey, I think I should kind of contact you guys. We were filling order here at this apartment, and there's like blood spatter in the bathroom. You know, with everything that had happened, you know, recently, we should be telling you about this. Excuse me? And then voila, that's how they obtained probable cause to then go into Jack Showalter's apartment on 11/22 when they got a search warrant for his apartment. That's how that happened. And it's like, wow, y'all just have no problem making up anything here. So I just want to ask Jack Showalter, hey, Jack, did you call the maintenance man after you left town and got out of Dodge, that you left town and you just happened to know you weren't coming back for like weeks? Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to call my maintenance guy and ask them, and I'm going to put a work order in to go check my water quality. Like, I'm getting defensive of Jack Showalter right now, because I don't buy any of that crap. Like, I think that they just lied and made up a situation to be able to get into that boy's apartment. That's crazy. They weren't even, the evidence shows based on the reports that they weren't even opening up these phones to forensically look at them to see whatever the heck you guys just told us. Okay, what's up? Is everybody being truthful? Exactly, Chris Tate. You know how dumb that sounds? Jack Showalter deciding, after he's already been questioned, that he's going to, oh, hey, tell the maintenance man to go into his apartment. Exactly. Clearly he didn't, you wouldn't need to get a search warrant if you asked somebody if you can go in there, right? Clearly Jack Showalter was like, get a warrant. No, you're not going to my apartment. But who knows, maybe Jack Showalter's reading these reports and is like, oh my God, I never called the maintenance man. What the heck is this shit? This is the first time I'm hearing about this. You know how crazy that would be? I mean, this is just what, reading those reports is just what makes everything just so, you know, hard to trust and unreliable than when you continue on. And all it would have done is given ammo to like how Karen Reed had the ammo with her defense team. And they were just literally eating up the investigation that
different feelings about the way that this case ended, but I don't think it's a fair criticism to say we would have learned more had this gone to trial. If anything, we would have learned less, because you also wouldn't have the defendant saying in his own words that he did.
He just said we would have learned less if we went to trial. Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right, because those police reports would not be in our hands right now. And that's where I've put it together, because that's how my brain operates, and just looking at like, hey, I just want to make sure that our rights weren't violated here. Okay. I want to see how you developed this case, how you worked with and partnered with these other law enforcement agencies to do one hell of an investigation and work all together and did it all legally. Okay. And to get one bad motherfucker off the streets, right? And all I'm seeing in these reports is, until I think you guys can go watch what I put out, and it's just really disappointing, to the point that if you were at trial, I mean, these families, it's almost like I think Bill Thompson had no choice but to try to throw a plea deal last minute, because I don't care what anybody says, you would never want to go to court with the type of case like this.
Yes, that he's guilty of it. So,
yeah. Having had this major case with international attention coming on the heels of the
why can't you ask him, what do you think about the blood that's in the house? There was other male blood. That's how they went to Showalter's place. They said the spatter matched the spatter that was in the apartment on the railing. So the jury is going to hear that there's other male profiles, unaccounted for blood in that house. Oh my God, what? And then the state's answer is going to be, well, yeah, we never built a family tree for that. We never did IgG for that. What did you do to figure out who that blood belonged to? Nothing. It wasn't important to you. How did you rule out that this was a crime that couldn't have been committed by multiple people? You don't care if you get the other people, just as long as you get one of the people. You know,
two Daybell cases last.
Then you're going to be able to say, you know, Bethany heard an explosion by her door, right? And a big boom, and she saw a flash underneath her. So something's going on down there, right? Around, was it the entrance, or was somebody leaving? Consistent with where the blood was, right? But over here you have Dylan saying that the killer left through the patio slider. So was the killer just, so did Bethany see one killer, and did Dylan see the other killer? No, they're both. I mean, how are you going to say on the stand? You cannot say, you have to train yourself to say, no, I just think that they were totally confused. Okay, so their statements are unreliable then, right? So you have no idea what to believe. How did you pick what you were going to listen to and what you weren't to develop your case?
Year and the year before. I mean, what has this been like for your office?
So we were involved in the Daybell cases actually pretty early on. It was a little bit before my time in that particular unit, but then the cases were given back, and you know this history better than I do, but the cases were given back to Lindsay Blake in Fremont County and to Rob Wood in Madison County. And our office then didn't get involved again until the Daybell trial. One of our deputy attorneys general from our office helped at that trial. Ingrid Beatty agreed to go and help them. And, you know, that was chronologically, that came after we had agreed to assist Bill in this case. But it was yet another example of where I believe the Attorney General's office can play a role in cases, even where the county prosecuting attorney wants to hold on to it and be the lead attorney. I think Ingrid did a phenomenal job in that case at trial and helping them present evidence the way that they did. Obviously, that ended in a conviction and getting the death penalty. So the other way that I like to look at it in the role that I'm in is all of these cases, as we've kind of touched on, will eventually make their way to our office, whether we're assisting the county prosecutor or not. We're going to be handling the appeals. And then if it goes on to federal court and federal habeas, that's our office too. And so my view of it is not only are we able to step in and help out the county prosecuting attorney, but by doing that, we can ensure that the record that we are arguing later on the appeal is as good as it can possibly be with the assistance of our office.
Okay. And so how do we, as citizens that could ever be on the opposite side and going up against the government, how do we ensure that we have an appellate attorney with us to assist our public podunk defender to ensure that our record as a citizen has the same mustard that you're talking about? This is one of Ann Taylor's arguments too. Like, well, who's prosecuting this case? It just keeps a revolving door here with the AG's office, and it just seems like, you know, there's just unlimited resources over there. Okay, and not using this case, but when you want to look at other cases, Richard Allen totally got fucked. I like what he said there. Like, it's like, I agree. Hey, you want to have all your ducks in a row, but we as citizens who would ever be in a situation where we could potentially be a defendant, okay, and we're over here claiming our innocence, you can have the weapons, but we can't. Like, come on. Like, you care about I care about putting the record for me too. And who you think that the average Joe Schmo out there, uneducated young person, is thinking the way that I'm thinking? No. You know, we all can't afford an Alan Jackson. Yeah. Or like a Bob Alessi, you know, David Inetti. I mean, think about Karen Reed's team. I think Karen Reed's case proves, you know, the deep-rooted not possibility, but the deep-rooted corruption that is layered because it's arms of things. Like, your prosecutor are protecting your police, you know, their detectives, all this chain of protection, even when they're wrong. And then you have the judges that they think that they're an arm of the prosecution as well. That's what I saw in Massachusetts. I'll let them have it. Instead of sustained, overruled, I'll let them have it. How can a judge, I'll let them have it? Like she's on the prosecution team by that comment. It's where judges are supposed to be wearing like a referee's jersey, like neutral, Lady Justice blind, you know? And I think the only way this is going to change is if defense attorneys start running to be judges. You know, people that are prosecutors for years on end in their career going on to becoming judges. Well, we need to get defense attorneys, public defenders, people like that. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, well, guess what? That's what Beverly Cannone was. It's like, fuck. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. Jeff, thank you very much. Is there anything that you want to add?
Yes, Jeff.
I would just say, I think in this case, obviously a horrific case, the biggest case I think Idaho's ever seen, hopefully ever will see, at least of this nature. It was a real privilege to work with Bill Thompson. I'm glad that our office had the opportunity to do that. Bill is somewhat of a legend in the prosecutor community here in Idaho. Before I got on the case, I didn't know Bill. I hadn't met him personally. All I really knew about him is I had heard that he was highly ethical, and he had a reputation for being the only prosecutor in Idaho who had gotten a murder conviction without the body, which is a pretty big deal. And so I was very optimistic. I think that it worked out really well, and I was grateful for that opportunity. And then last, most importantly, I just wanted, since this is probably the only public time I'll speak about this case, my heart goes out to the victims in this case and the people who were affected. I think sitting through that sentencing hearing was an honor for me. It was a privilege to listen to the victims express how this terrible, terrible thing, how he had affected them. And it was great to see such a wide variety of emotion and responses, but in their individual way, every one of them was brave and powerful in expressing that. And it was just an honor to be there and a privilege to work on this case. And I do hope that this ending allows them to find some form of closure.
And I think the best way that you get that is release the documents. Release the documents. So I think that if the family release the prosecutors, release the discovery. That's to hear him say that a trial would have brought less. Well, here's your opportunity then to bring more, and it's going to be because of the papers. So, well, that's going to conclude tonight's special Saturday Night Live. Saba. 314 documents. Publicly, I'm going to go over the last batch. And you guys can catch that on Monday morning. Wake up with me. But tomorrow night, I'm going to be live on Harsh Reality. So go ahead, click over there, click on the reminder. And then after I'm live with him, then I'll do my recap over here of that live. So my Sunday Night Live is still intact, but I'm going to be actually, I think it's I want to say it's 5:45 Eastern Standard Time. But just go over there and double check. But I'm on Harsh Reality tomorrow, Sunday. And then I'll do the post game over here. So do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, or thumbs down it. I'll never tell you how to think, how to feel. You have your own opinion. Make yourself known. Don't be a fence rider.